Alright, so I recently finished playing through Destroy All Humans 2, so got some pre-recorded footage here in the background, and I should note, especially if you're not really paying attention to the footage, when I'm referring to Destroy All Humans 2 and even its predecessor, we're talking about the originals, not the reprobed remakes that they put out in the 2020s. Honestly, it's kind of hard to find content on the originals anymore. Like, I was trying to look up a guide for a few things, and I had to go digging a bit for it. But yeah, the main reason I played this instead of the newer ones is, for me, it was cheaper since I already had the original ones. I've had them for a while, so might as well not have that money go to waste. Actually, this game in particular was probably one of the first games I got when I first got my credit card, and just about immediately set up my Amazon account. Because just at the time, I was really in the mood to cause some chaos in the game. Had some good memories with my neighbors doing just that. It was one of those things to where GTA was the go-to, but sometimes you want a little something different, or sometimes you want to have that multiplayer experience, or don't feel like having to wait for whoever's turn it is to die as you sort of hand off the controller back and forth between the group of you. The split screen in this, especially for, a little chaotic open world game, was great. I remember thinking back then too, this is the future. A lot of the games soon are going to have this. And then online play sort of took over right after that. And it was a poorly aged prediction, but I still miss it in a way. As fun as online can be, it still doesn't compare in certain aspects to, couch co-op or competitions and that sort of thing. But yeah, this was a game I meant to have played through a little while ago, because I actually played through the first one right when the remake was coming out, I believe in 2020. And I dove right into this one right after. But for whatever reason, I wanted a break, and it took me pretty much 5 years to come back to it. I don't really remember why. The only thing I remember is it seemed like a good break point that I was at, since I had just entered Albion, or whatever the second area is called, the one in the UK. The change of scenery being recent and not being super late just made it seem like a good place to be able to pick back up whenever I did, without feeling lost or having to reset, which was, pretty much the case when I did finally get to it. I did really like the kind of world tour aspect they had to this game. The first one, I believe, was all in the US, but here you start off in the US, but like I said, you go to the UK, Japan, Russia, or at the time, Soviet Union. And they all, kind of stand out in their own right, all feel unique and fun. I actually think for the most part they progressively got better as you went along. Although I didn't really like Russia, Soviet Union level. I don't know. Maybe a creative decision, but it felt a little more empty. Things felt, a little more spread out. Kind of a pain in the ass to go to. Especially too because you have preset UFO points. And that's kind of, the quickest way to get around. And there were, some areas you'd have to go to that felt, a little more out of the way than usual. And like I said, I generally liked this approach better than, the first one. Although the first game also had pretty distinct, fun locations. I don't know, to me, it felt a little more fresher going to different countries and a little more like of a grand scale, if you would, of, everything going on. And there is a lot going on in this game. Like I said, it's been a little while. Like I said, nearly 5 years since I've played the original, but I don't remember really doing much outside of main campaign, maybe a couple side missions, and sort of collectibles you might find in between. But here, like that side mission that was just in the pre-recorded footage there, he had some pretty in-depth side missions and a lot more collectibles, and it felt really rewarding, I guess, too. You have, just a lot of different weapons to upgrade and see what they're, fully capable of as you go along. I will admit, at points, it was kind of fatiguing just because I felt like some of the side content went more of a quantity over quality. Some of it was kind of, samey and, not too memorable or engaging. But I made it through. Like I said, the reward was good enough. And I eventually did 100% complete everything. So I finally found, a groove or mood that worked out pretty well, that I can understand it not being for everyone to go that far with. Actually, even looking as I was playing right before this cutscene, because there was no indicators on the map for any of the collectibles. But later in the game, something that helped push me through is when I started to get indicators when there was specific collectibles nearby. I don't know if I had to toggle something, or I mean, if I did it by complete accident. Maybe instead it was a collect so many before the rest show up, or advance so far in the campaign. I don't know. I wish maybe that was a little more clear. It may have been a little handy earlier in the game. Could have helped maybe break up some of the other side content a little better. The funny thing is that I mentioned, it's fun to get the upgrades and see what all the weapons are fully capable of, but I pretty much stuck primarily to the disintegrator ray until pretty much the final side mission, which, they went all out with in terms of combat. I don't know, there's a few reasons I feel like for that. First off is the way you collect ammo is you use an ability to essentially shapeshift certain items into ammo. And I think it's just a random chance between the various different ammos you have. It's like I always felt like disintegrator ammo was aplenty, but some of the rarer ammo, I mean, it could take a while and a lot of, just grinding through to get, more of. And I always kind of have that approach of I'd rather save it at least until the end, because, things will probably get tougher. It would come more in handy there, and it winds up turning into I get so used to not using it that I wind up just not using it at all. So, I don't know, I wish maybe there was a way to get specific ammo, maybe through certain objects, or maybe, if you're already filled all the way up with more common ammo, you'll start getting some of the rarer ones since you don't need the more common ones. That, and the one thing I liked later in the game is that they introduced a new enemy type that only a certain type of weapon was effective against. And I really like that. I wish there was more of that. If, there was, more enemies, or maybe enemies with certain armor that had similar restrictions. Something else that was definitely really noticeable with this game versus the first is just a better, in my opinion, game difficulty. I remember the first game getting really brutal towards the end, and I pretty much needed cheat codes just to complete the main campaign and all of that. It was rough. And honestly, it was a little nervous seeing that. So here's the thing. The first game has cheat codes. The second game doesn't. So like I said, that was concerning. But then when I look at the remakes, the first one doesn't have cheat codes, but the second one does. It's weird that they went the exact opposite there for some reason. But luckily, I wound up backing up my copy, and sorry if it stuttered a bit there. I don't know if that was just on my end or not, but I found out how to back up my copy and wound up playing it on an emulator, so even if it got brutal, I could maybe use save states to help make things a little more reasonable for my skill level. Wound up not really needing it, although I did kind of use it for mission checkpoints because, and this was a similar issue GTA kind of had at the time, to where you would have, really long missions and you'd die at the very end and you would have to repeat the whole thing, which is bad, especially if there's, a lot of travel between where you accept the mission and wherever they wind up taking you. So had that quality of life aspect, as well as I did use whatever upscaling tools they had as well to up the resolution, and I think it turned out looking better than I was expecting, although Crypto is super detailed. Like, it was pretty impressive when they would zoom in on him in cutscenes and that, or even if you just kind of look during gameplay. But some other things were kind of rough, like, some of the NPCs, particularly Natalia, when you would talk to them, around missions and they would zoom in on them. It's like not even close to the detail of Crypto, but I don't know, maybe that's just the way I have it set up here. Maybe that can be better on different setups, or obviously it might not stand out as much on, original circumstances, but definitely a fun time. And almost cool to see that kind of old, cheesy, I don't know, perception of aliens sort of come to life and be, ridiculous and, funny in different ways. This was like the height of the developer pandemic. I believe they were making the Star Wars Battlefronts around the same time too. You can tell because they have the same sound effects for some of the stuff here. Yeah, kind of a shame they're not around anymore. And then I think there's 2 more of these games, but I never got them because I just heard they weren't very good. I don't even know if they're considering a future year, whether they would, since they already went through the remakes, if they would try to salvage something from the other games, or sort of ignore their existence and try for a official third game. Almost reminds me of the Crash Bandicoot 4 situation, but we'll see. Definitely, would be a fun franchise to see a bit more of, hopefully with, high quality.